So our topic is going to be Revelation. Scott, why Revelation?
Well, it's in the Bible, so there's my simple answer.
Okay.
But I've I grew up with Revelation all over the place, all the bizarre imagery, but it was very literal. And my pastor was a pretty restrained guy, but my youth pastor was more than willing to locate and identify certain political figures as the Antichrist, or you know, it was pretty bizarre. But I mean, most of us at that time, I'm talking about the early 70s, were quite convinced that Jesus would return before 1980 or so because of the belief that the fig tree of Matthew 24 was a figure of the rebirth of the state of Israel, and it was only going to be one generation. And that was 1948 to 1978. And I learned when I was in college that a generation in first century Judaism was shorter than that. So I was glad we were beyond 78 when I learned some of those things. But I teach it, and I believe that so many people in the United States, so many Christians, have been taken in by a way of reading the book that I think is mistaken, and I think at times dangerously mistaken, and it has hurt our Christian life development in certain ways because it leans towards speculation of who in the modern world is doing what in the book of Revelation. And it leans toward a form of Christian living that is just waiting passively for the time to come, and then we will escape, rather than developing a true response to the powers, the empires, the political corruptions that are characteristic of our world.
Great, great. So your book on Revelation was just released this past Tuesday, and I've had an opportunity to read it. Excellent book, by the way. And
Thank you.
in the afterwards, you mentioned that this is not a commentary. So tell us a little bit about the book and how it's structured.
Well, one of the things is one of the editors wanted it to be a commentary, and made all kinds of suggestions. And we told another editor that has nothing to do with what we're actually doing. So they were failing to read it the way we had actually written it, Cody Matchett and I. This is a book that both interprets the book of Revelation and provides a method for knowing how to read it. So it's not a textbook type book. It's pretty readable. In fact, I've had some people already write me and said, I have no seminary degree. I never went to Bible college, and I thought it was perfectly understandable. So that was a real compliment to us of what we're trying to achieve. But it's not going to take people from the beginning of the book of Revelation to the end. But we try to give people categories, major ideas, like beginning with Babylon in Revelation 17 to 18 and understanding what we call the playbill. It is the major actors in the drama of the book of Revelation, so that when they read it, they'll see how these things fit into a larger narrative and to what the book of Revelation is doing.
The subtitle to the book, I'm looking at my notes so I get this right. Subtitle to the book is A Prophetic Call to Dissident Discipleship. Explain your use of the word dissident there.
A dissident is someone who takes a stand against something that's going on. All right. So they're not going to be conformists. And in the first century, the believers of Western Asia Minor, where these letters to the seven churches are, those locations, Ephesus, say, Sardis, these are people, churches, Christians, families, households living under the thumb of the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire's capacity to influence and shape and constrain behaviors was remarkable. It wasn't like having police on every corner, as you did in Nazi Germany, but instead it was an all-pervasive force that connected everything in life to Rome. images everywhere, the reminders of the emperor everywhere, worship of the emperor. So it's a form of idolatry for Jews, of course, and for Christians. But all these things are tied together. So if you went to worship at one of the shrines, if you participated in one of the major holidays, you were actually involved in almost a semi-religious political adherence and allegiance to the emperor. So Christians were asking in the first century, how do we live in this situation? Mm-hmm. And by the end of the first century, there was a lot more pressure on the Christians. So when this book, I think, it's difficult to date. Let's just put it that way. Pressure is on the Christians on how to live. And one of the things that John teaches the disciples, the followers of Jesus in this area, is that they have to follow the Lamb rather than the emperor. They are to walk on the path with the Lamb, with Jesus, as their true Lord, as the King of Kings. And that will mean routine resistance and daily dissidence as disciples of Jesus. They will learn in the nooks and crannies of their home, where they won't have the regular shrines of worship. They will learn at the marketplace. They will learn in interactions with their neighbors that they have a calling in life that transcends the calling of the Roman Empire to obey it. And so every Christian in Western Asia Minor is taught to be, one of the language we use is they're taught to be foot draggers. They're just going to drag their feet when they're being carried away. They're going to make it difficult. They're going to resist. They're going to be dissidents. They're going to protest. Sometimes it will be verbally, but most often it will be with their behaviors.
One of the themes that you develop in the book from Revelation is the theme of worship. What can the book of Revelation teach us about worship?
This is something I think we miss. The book has beautiful songs in it. Sometimes they're called hymns. African-American scholar Brian Blount is one of my favorite scholars on the book of Revelation.
Can I get a witness?
Can I Get a Witness is a really good book.
Yeah.
But he got a big commentary on Revelation too that's very, very good and clear and avoids all the nonsense that scholars can get themselves into. But Brian Blount has taught me that these songs are closer to what we would call the spirituals of the African-American tradition than our hymn book. So I don't like to call them hymns because I think of a hymn book, and there's nothing wrong with a hymn book, and I know your church likes to sing, and there's nothing wrong with singing, but these songs are at the same time acts of rebellion in a way against the Roman Empire. And when you sing these songs or worship God in this kind of song or music, you are actually expressing that God is sovereign, that the Lord Jesus Christ is the true ruler of the world. The Lamb is the way of life and not the way of Caesar. So those songs are songs of resistance, and they're amazing when you start looking at them carefully.
You probably know this, Scott, but traditionally churches of Christ have certainly been amillennial and for the most part preterist, maybe a little bit in our approach to understanding Revelation. How might your approach help us?
Well, I mean, it's a good way of approaching the book of Revelation, amillennial. I mean, you just never were a part of the dispensational movement that attached itself through Dallas Seminary and dispensationalism throughout the Bible churches. But I would suspect that many people in your churches have heard this sort of approach. So it's going to be a challenge for that sort of person. But the Church is a Christ tradition. If it interprets the book of Revelation in a way that is amillennial and preterist, has the chance of embracing this sort of book because it takes that viewpoint, but turns it into a book about discipleship rather than time. So someone who says that their view is preterist is actually telling me that this book is for the first century. If they tell me it's amillennial, they're telling me they're not premillennial and they're not postmillennial. That's telling me about what they think about the millennium, which I think is very unimportant to the book of Revelation. So the question is, what is the gravity of the interpretation that the Church of Christ has embraced? I've heard 2 sermons by 2 of the Church of Christ's best preachers on the book of Revelation, and they were electrifyingly good sermons. And I thought would fit very much as to what I'm saying in this book. But the focus of our book is about discipleship and how to live in the way of the Lamb when the empire is breathing down your neck. And our contention is that Babylon of Revelation 17 is a stereotype, a trope, an image of empire in our world, and its 7 themes can speak into our world. And it teaches us what I would call a discipleship connected to the political regime of our day. Babylon is timeless. It's not a first century church only, or first century Rome, and it's not a prediction of some future empire. It is a description of empire as empire that all Christians have to learn to resist.
So it's a timeless message.
It's timeless.
Timeless. Scott, on Saturday evening, we're going to have a special event for our university students with Dr. Samuel Perry of the University of Oklahoma. And really looking forward to that, and excitement's being generated among our college students. Would you comment on what you and Dr. Perry might discuss that evening?
Well, Dr. Perry is uniquely qualified to interact with me about this book because he went to Dallas Seminary. So he learned dispensationalism to the core. At the same time, Dr. Perry is a brilliant scholar in sociology about white Christian nationalism in the United States. And this book, Revelation, and Revelation for the rest of us, the book that Cody and I have written, actually applies the book of Revelation at times to Christian nationalism, because there you see Christians aligning with Babylon. And as a result, I think a conversation with Dr. Perry will be, I can't wait to hear what he has to say. I think we're going to have a good conversation.
Yeah. Really looking forward to that. Well, Scott, anything else you might add to our discussion here?
Well, I would encourage the people at your church to look beyond the local St. Louis Cardinals and start thinking about the Cleveland Guardians.
Well, it's all about the Oklahoma Sooners here.
Oh, the Oklahoma Sooners. Oh, yeah. Well, let's hope that they get better than they have been the last few years.
Well, now, if you talk softball, number one,
I'm thinking of that football team.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
And I really enjoyed their great basketball teams. I really liked when they had that one guy is just an amazing shooter. He's in the NBA now.
Yeah, Buddy Hield. Hield.
Oh, he was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would say I encourage people to read the book of Revelation because it will teach us how to live as Christians in a political world that is as fraught and as divisive as the American Christian scene is right now. It teaches us, in a sense, don't take sides, take the side of Jesus. And I'll quote one of the great Church of Christ preachers, Randy Harris, who said the themes of the book of Revelation are God's team wins, choose your team, don't be stupid.
That sounds like Randy Harris.
And it's so true to the book of Revelation. It's so true. When I heard him say this, I was in Lubbock, Texas. I went, that's it right there. That's the book. That's what it's doing. Choose your team.
Well, Scott, once again, thank you for spending some time with us on this Saturday afternoon. And again, we are so excited for you to be with us and looking forward to it.
So am I. Thank you. Pray for me.
I will.